Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, accompanied by Attorney General Janet Reno, Deputy Attorney General Eric Holder, Senator Patrick Leahy, Representative Bart Stupak, and Wilmington, Delaware Police Officer Jonathan Hall.
Thank you very much. Please be seated and good afternoon. Madam Attorney General, Mr. Holder, Officer Hall, Senator Leahy, Congressman Stupak, Senator Biden, Senator Specter, and there are now over 50 members of Congress here. I think at least that many had accepted to come. And we see our mayor there, Mayor Williams, and Mayor Schmoke, Mayor Rendell, and other officials, Associate Attorney General Fisher, Treasury Undersecretary Enforcement Jim Johnson, and the Director of our COPS office, Joe Brand. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here today and welcome. 5 years ago this summer, after a remarkable effort in Congress, which required, among other things, the breaking of an intense filibuster, with the support of many of the people here today, I was able to sign into law a crime bill that was the first of its kind, a comprehensive bill that funded local solutions to local problems and enhanced the promising practice of community policing. A bill that also banned assault weapons and demanded tougher punishment for the toughest criminals and provided innovative prevention strategies to keep our young people out of trouble in the first place. It was a crime bill that brought our laws into line with our oldest values, requiring all of us to take responsibility at every level of government and every community in America to prevent crime and protect our families. I'd like to say a special word of thanks to Senator Biden, who's here today, for his extraordinary efforts in what seems like at once a long time ago and only yesterday. Today we know that the strategy embodied in the crime bill, which was really written by local police officers and law enforcement officials, is working. The murder rate is down to its lowest level in 30 years. Violent crime has dropped 20% in the last 6 years alone. And in many smaller ways, reducing crimes like vandalism and littering that undermine the quality of life, we are beginning to repair the social fabric and restore civility to everyday life. There are many reasons for this success. The Brady Bill has stopped over 250,000 illegal handgun sales to felons, fugitives, and stalkers. The assault weapons ban has helped. So have tougher penalties and the waning of the devastating crack epidemic. But police chiefs, politicians, and people on the street all agree that the most important factor has been community policing. After all, until the crime bill passed, the violent crime had tripled over the preceding 30 years, but the size of our police forces had increased by only 10%. Where police officers, therefore, used to cruise anonymously through the streets, now community police officers walk the beat and know the people in the neighborhoods, becoming involved in the lives of the people they protect and involving them in the fight against crime. Community policing has worked miracles in many of our cities, where violent crime once was out of control and law-abiding citizens mistrusted police, often as much as they feared gangs. Now in cities and communities all across America, residents work with police officers, forming neighborhood watches, banding together against drug dealers, building connections that are the core of community life and the heart of civil society. When I signed the crime bill, I pledged to help communities all over our nation fund 100,000 community police officers by the year 2000. Today, we are keeping that pledge. Since 1994, the COPS program has funded 99,000 new police officers, over half already on the beat. Today, I am pleased to announce the latest COPS grant over $96 million for nearly 1,500 police officers in more than 500 communities. This will bring us to over 100,000 community police officers funded, ahead of schedule, and under budget. And I thank you for all of your efforts in that regard. In making America's thin blue line thicker and stronger, our nation will be safer. But you and I know our job is far from finished. Last week, I sent new legislation to Congress to close the loopholes in our gun laws, raise the age of handgun ownership to 21, hold adults liable for recklessly keeping guns and ammunition within the reach of children, and asking for background checks for the purchase of explosives. Today, I will send to Congress a new crime bill for the 21st century to advance our crime-fighting strategy in several respects and build on the successes of the 1994 Crime Act. We know what works, and we should make certain that those efforts continue and are expanded. We know, too, that crime is still too high in too many communities. And the next stage of our crime-fighting strategy must focus with renewed intensity on the high crime areas to break the cycle of violence on our meanest streets. Finally, we know we face new threats as a result of the new technologies of the information age. So here's what the bill does. First and most important, it expands the COPS program, helping communities to hire up to 50,000 more police officers, especially those hardest hit by crime. It will help them hire local prosecutors who work much as community police officers do in the neighborhoods where they can make the biggest difference. The bill will also give 21st century tools to our police officers to fight the criminals who themselves increasingly use technology to commit crimes and to avoid capture. The bill will provide grants to help communities encourage schools, faith-based groups, and citizens themselves in restoring peace to our neighborhoods. School districts can use the grants for preventive efforts that will reduce the likelihood of tragic violence. The second thing the bill will do is to help steer young people away from crime and gangs by strengthening anti-truancy and mentoring programs, by cracking down on gang members who intimidate witnesses. Third, the bill will help to break the cycle of crime and drugs. 3 out of 4 people in the criminal justice system have drug problems. If we treat those drug problems, we can cut the crime rate dramatically. The bill says to prisoners, if you stay on drugs, you stay behind bars. To those on parole, if you want to keep your freedom, you must stay free of drugs. Fourth, the crime bill will do more to protect our most vulnerable citizens. It will punish retirement rip-off artists, nursing home operators who abuse and neglect their residents, telemarketers who prey on older Americans. It will toughen penalties for people who commit violent crimes in the presence of children and reauthorize the Violence Against Women Act. Finally, the crime bill will strengthen our efforts to combat international crime and terrorism. The threat of weapons of mass destruction is real and increasing in an age of technological change and open borders. The bill will make it a federal crime to possess the biological agents used in such weapons without a legitimate, peaceful purpose. This is the kind of comprehensive approach that has brought crime down 6 years in a row now. It is the kind of tough but smart approach we need in the new century. I am pleased that so many members of the Congress are committed to move this agenda forward this year. I thank the Democrats who have come out in support of the legislation, and I hope that, as in 1994, we will enjoy strong support from Republican members who share our objectives, and I thank those who are here today. I look forward to working with members of both parties to protect our families and to make our communities safe. Now, as you all know, this is Police Week, and you see a number of police officers behind me and out in the audience. It's a week where we pay tribute to our nation's law enforcement officers. Without their courage, commitment, and ability to meet the challenges of our time and to help keep our streets safe, life would be much more difficult in America. It is fitting, therefore, that the next speaker is a young community police officer from the Wilmington, Delaware Police Department, funded through our COPS program, who used to be, I might add, a 5th grade teacher, and who truly represents the changing face and the bright future of policing in America. Officer Jonathan Hall was a teacher when he decided to become a police officer, but he still finds time to be a mentor to at-risk young people. And he takes every chance he can to talk to children about how they can protect themselves from crime. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming a man who symbolizes what we have been working to bring to America for the last 6 years, Officer Jonathan Hall.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Attorney General Janet Reno, Senator Biden, and members of Congress. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and privilege to be representing police officers all across the country. Again, my name is Jonathan Hall. I am a 3-year veteran of the Wilmington Police Department in Wilmington, Delaware. Our police department is composed of roughly 290 police officers, and we service approximately 75,000 residents as well as a large number of commuters. In recent years, departments nationwide have placed a new focus on community-oriented policing. A key part of our department's mission statement is to work in a true partnership with our fellow citizens. And this is something that we take very seriously. My own close ties to the community in Wilmington are what led to my desire to become a Wilmington police officer. Thanks to the 1994 Crime Act and the COPS program in particular, the Wilmington Police Department has been able to hire more police officers, including myself. Having more police on the street means that we are able to provide more community police services, including police substations in areas for high crime and officers on bike patrol in densely populated areas. Statistics show that violent and drug-related crimes in Wilmington have decreased significantly in recent years. And today there is a greater sense of well-being among residents and commuters. Believe it or not, as the President just stated, I was a 5th grade teacher, not far from here in Prince George's County, Maryland. I love working with children and their families. The decision to leave elementary education was a very difficult one, but I really wanted to do more. Becoming a police officer has given me the opportunity to work with a wide variety of people, while still allowing me to work closely with children and their families. More specifically, the community policing concept puts me on the street in a one-to-one contact with members of our community to establish strong relationships and trust. People now see me as opposed to my uniform. I've had children and adults whom I've interacted with on the street while on duty flag me down and call me by my name while I'm out of uniform to tell me about a new job, or that they're staying out of trouble, or that they're not fighting with their families anymore. This is where the true rewards are. It is sad that the situation in Colorado is at the forefront of Americans' minds. Many of us, adults and children alike, are asking, where have we gone wrong? My heart and prayers go out to all the victims and families. My heart also goes out to all of us who have been shaken by this tragedy. Perhaps if more people had the opportunity to become positive role models in their community, we could be more aware when people are in trouble. I feel that the COPS program, by giving me the opportunity to serve as a Wilmington police officer, has made me one of those role models. I want to thank you again for allowing me to be here, and it's my pleasure and honor to introduce to you U.S. Attorney General Janet Reno.
You did a fine job. Thank you so much.
Officer Hall, thank you. Thank you for showing America what law enforcement is all about. You are a great example for us all. Mr. President, members of Congress, my colleagues at the Department of Justice, I want to thank the men and women of law enforcement, represented by officers here today, by representatives of law enforcement agencies, all of you who in your communities, on your streets, in this nation have done so much to make the crime bill a reality and to see it implemented the right way. I'd like to recognize Jim Pasco with the Fraternal Order of Police, Dan Rosenblatt with the International Association of Chiefs of Police, Bob Scully with the National Association of Police Organizations, Chris Donnellan of the International Brotherhood of Police Officers, Art Reddy of the International Union of Police Associations, Sheriff Philip McKelvey of the National Sheriff's Association, Newman Flanagan of the National District Attorneys Association, and Bob Stewart of the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, Tom Frazier of the Police Executive Research Forum, and Rich Gallo of the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association. Mr. President, I remember your first State of the Union address. Crime was up. People didn't think that we could really do anything about it. They were looking for leadership. You made a covenant with the people of this nation to give them the monies for 100,000 new community police officers. And today, we have reached a great milestone in that process. We have now made grants to fund those 100,000 new police officers. We are already seeing the successes of these grants. Officer Hall has spoken so eloquently about his experience in Wilmington. But all across this nation, in the largest cities and in the small towns, in the rural counties, we are seeing the results of officers on the street who care, who involve their community, who put their life on the line, and who build trust and safety. Under your leadership, Mr. President, we have provided local law enforcement with the tools they need to fight crime, and it's paying off. Your Brady Act has prevented more than 250,000 felons, fugitives, and stalkers from getting their hands on a gun. But you've done more. By closing the gun show loophole, as you have proposed, establishing a 3-day waiting period before a handgun is sold, by limiting sales to 1 handgun a month, and by prohibiting violent juvenile felons from possessing a firearm, just like their adult counterparts, we can make serious inroads in the culture of violence in this nation. With crime down, we have a unique opportunity, a wonderful opportunity to take new steps towards taking back our streets and our communities. Under your new crime bill, we will fund even more community police officers. We will provide funds for new technologies so that these officers have the latest crime-fighting techniques at their fingertips. We will fund community prosecutors to work in the community to proactively stamp out persistent crime problems. And we will continue to develop programs which prevent crime in the first place by making an investment in our children. Mr. President, you have done so much for the men and women in law enforcement who put their lives on the line every day for us. I think we all thank them, and I salute you for what you have done in these 6 years. It is now my pleasure to introduce one of the people that I think knows most about law enforcement from his experience both in law enforcement and in the United States Senate, Senator Pat Leahy of Vermont.
Thank you very much, Attorney General Reno, and Officer, thank you for your comments. It's an honor to be here sharing the podium with all of you, and I must say, especially with those lined up behind, I worked shoulder to shoulder with local law enforcement as a prosecutor in Vermont for 8 years. I sometimes think, Mr. President, that was the better career I had in public life than one now. We all know that local law enforcement is where the fight against crime is waged and won. And with the efforts of all of you here, and Mr. President, with your extraordinary leadership, and this is a commitment, we do these kind of events. I've been in a lot of private meetings where I've heard the President say over and over again, what are we doing on the issue of crime? What are we doing on the COPS program? How are we going forward? This is not just for the Rose Garden. This is in an awful lot of other places where he has pushed this. And because of that, because of all the people who work together, the crime rates have declined significantly for each of the last 6 years. Violent juvenile crime has been declining as well. What a wonderful statistic to look at. It shows community policing is working. Federal assistance to state and local law enforcement is being put to good use. But we can't stop. We should be redoubling our efforts against youth violence, in the war against illegal drugs, and to provide help to children and their families, their teachers, their schools, and local law enforcement. We have a number of the city's mayors here. We were just up on the Hill where we had an event where they endorsed S9, the Senate Democratic Crime Bill. It was reintroduced on the first legislative day of this year. And it contains many of the proposals in the 21st Century Law Enforcement and Public Safety Act being unveiled here today. That's why I'm so supportive of what the President has reported here. I know that the administration's bill also includes provisions introduced in S751 to protect seniors and provide the new safety net for seniors that they deserve and need, because seniors are especially vulnerable. It is interesting how those at both ends of the age spectrum, our children and senior citizens, seem to be so vulnerable. But the good news is that the President and the Senate and House Democrats and mayors and those from law enforcement are working together. And we need to make it bipartisan. I think that otherwise this great chance for good programs is going to be squandered. This morning, unfortunately, in a party line vote, Senate Republicans used their majority to kill our law enforcement amendment to the Juvenile Justice Bill. Even though the proposal that they killed would have increased assistance to local law enforcement and crime prevention and anti-drug programs, it would have extended the Brady Law to violent juvenile offenders, it would have increased penalties against those who illegally supply guns to juveniles, and increased gun tracing and prosecution efforts. These should not be partisan issues. Everybody should have supported it, and I hope before the bill leaves the floor, they will reconsider, change their vote, and support these extremely good programs. And that's where we need you. To make real progress, we all have to get together. We have the commitment of the President and the Attorney General and local law enforcement, all who are gathered here today. Let us redouble our efforts. And the House of Representatives, we're lucky that one of those who's leading the effort is not only a seasoned legislator, but one who looks at this with an experience of 12 years in the Michigan State Police. It's a privilege to me to introduce my friend, Congressman Stupak.
Thank you, Senator Leahy, Mr. President, my colleagues from the House and Senate, and so many distinguished guests. I'm very pleased to be here today for the unveiling of the COPS program, which calls for an additional 50,000 police officers. I want to thank President Clinton for his efforts in bringing community-oriented police services to cities and towns all across America. I have served as both a city police officer and a Michigan State Police trooper for approximately 12 years. When I was elected to the Michigan legislature in 1988, I authored legislation to bring community policing to Michigan. I've always advocated bringing police officers and citizens together, coming together, working together to solve neighborhood and community problems. As a police officer and as a congressman of an extremely rural district, I'd like to thank the President for the 195 police officers the COPS programs has placed in my 28 counties in rural northern Michigan. The COPS program's harshest critics are the people it serves, the chiefs of police and the local sheriffs. Yet, no matter what their party affiliation is, Democrat, Republican, or independent, all have praised the ease of dealing with the COPS program and the one-page grant application. Nationally, we're witnessing a dramatic decrease in crime rates. More cops on the street, coupled with a strong economy, helps to decrease crime. Yet, we are haunted by recent events of unforeseen violence in our nation's schools. I hope and pray that today's COPS initiative becomes a commitment not just for our nation, but also for our schools through the School Resource Officer Program, COPS in the schools. Cops working in partnership with teachers and students to solve crime can stop this unprecedented violence. Cops and school resource officers cannot be a 1-year, 3-year, or 5-year commitment, but a commitment of a generation, a commitment of our generation to save future generations. It's with this COPS initiative and a commitment to the School Resource Officers Program that we can duplicate the success of the COP program to reduce violence in our schools. I brought my years of service as a police officer to the Congress. One of the first things I did was formulate the Congressional Law Enforcement Caucus to start a dialogue between members of Congress and police officers. President Bill Clinton has always joined us in our dialogue, and we appreciate this administration's continued commitment to law enforcement. Together, the Law Enforcement Caucus and this administration have looked out for the health and safety of law enforcement officers throughout this nation. Together, we have passed legislation to provide educational benefits for dependents of slain and disabled law enforcement officers, appropriated money so local law enforcement officers can purchase bulletproof vests, waived the federal income tax provision on pension benefits of slain police officers, and of course initiated the School Resource Officer Program. So thank you, Mr. President, not just for caring about reducing the nation's crime rate, but thank you for taking care of America's crime fighters. As a cop, I know what it means to have a good partner, one you can count on. And we in law enforcement have no better partners in our fight against crime than President Bill Clinton and Vice President Al Gore. Mr. President, thank you again.
Thank you very much.
It's now my pleasure to introduce Deputy Attorney General Eric Holder. Eric.
It's a great honor for me to be here today to share this podium with these great people, and especially with the folks behind us, the men and women in blue, some of whom I've had the great pleasure of actually working with when I was the United States Attorney here in Washington, D.C. I hope that what we have heard today will send a loud message to every corner of America. We will work together. We will work together to do whatever it takes to fight crime and to keep our families safe. I want to thank you all for coming.